Dave, welcome back.
Thank you.
You've been away a long time.
Well, it's really only 2 years out of Ocean Township, but 10 years out of the Township Manager position.
Is that right? That's a long time for us. We recently spoke to 3 other former managers, and together, your years and theirs add up to 42 years of township management that we'll be chronicling.
And it's interesting.
It is, because they were probably some of the biggest years in town. Would you say the most development took place, the bigger changes?
Absolutely.
Before you, there was the apartments, and before them, there were the apartments. And that was probably another pivotal point in town.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but continued to be. So you retired in 2007 after 20 years.
Correct.
Did it seem like a long time?
It flew by.
It flew by.
It really did.
2 decades.
Yes.
You were 36 years old when you came to town.
I was.
That's amazing.
Young man.
And looking good. And now your home is in Virginia.
That's correct.
And but your family is here, huh? Some parts of your family are here.
My son still lives in Ocean Township with his wife, and we moved because our grandchildren are in Virginia. So I wanted to be a little closer to the grandkids.
Isn't that always the reason, huh?
Yes.
So I'll say. Did you tell me, or did I read somewhere that you said that your children said they were going to stay, even if you were going to move on as a manager?
They understood my career path, even at their young age when we moved here. And at one point at the family dinner, they said to me, "We understand if you may have to move on at some point, Dad, but we just want to let you know we're staying here." So they had a great love of Ocean Township and the Ocean Township School District.
How old were they when they did that?
When we moved here, we had one going into 5th grade and one going into 2nd grade. So I guess that would have been 7 and 10 or something like that.
They threw down the gauntlet very early then.
Well, it might have been a year after that, once they really came to love Ocean Township and the Little League and the school.
Yeah, it's hard for kids to move around. It really is. So you came from Metuchen.
Correct.
And that's a, 2.4 square mile town to an 11.2 square mile town?
It was, yes, a big transition, very different communities. Metuchen was known as the hole in the donut of Edison, and it was pretty much close to 100% developed.
Right. It's still a lovely town, though.
It's a wonderful town. I had 7 wonderful years there.
Their traffic was a considerable problem because they had like a parkway and a turnpike exit nearby, and yet when you came to town, people were complaining about traffic here.
Well, I was on the rubber chicken circuit. When you come, you're going to the Rotary Club and the various, it wasn't called the Chamber of Commerce at the time. I'm trying to remember what they call it, the Businessmen Association or something like that. But there was just 2 things that came up at every meeting. One was overdevelopment and high density development. And I go, "What are you talking about, high density?" And they would point out the Manor and Cotswold, which were the most recent developments in town. And I'd say, "Well, does anybody know what the density is there?" And they go, I think it was 3.4, 3.6 units for the acre. And I'm going, "You have to excuse me, I came from Middlesex County."
Right.
You don't see that low of a density in Middlesex County being developed. And I said, "There's a lot of open space." "Yes, but they're all built so close." "But you have to take the holistic view of this thing and see how much open space there was." And the other thing they would say was traffic, and particularly pointing to West Park Avenue at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, okay, so if you come up to a red light and it's red, what do? And they're looking at me like they hired an idiot. And they're going,
"Hopefully stop."
We stop. And I go, "And when it turns green, we go through the intersection." I go, "Now let me explain traffic to you from Middlesex County perspective. it doesn't matter whether it's red or green, you're stopping because it's backed up that far. And actually, when it turns red, you start to move up because it finally reached where you were sitting in line.
And so you felt you were making progress. My turn to move up. Actually, when you came to town, I asked you to come to speak to the League of Women Voters, and the traffic came up. And you said, well, in Metuchen, if you get through on the third light, you're happy.
Yes.
That's what you said.
Very good memory.
I was astonished because we were saying, my gosh, I didn't get through on the first light,
Right.
you know? Yeah. The town had many apartments by that time, and so when things started going up in multiples, like the Cotswold or the Manor,
Yes.
people thought, well, here we go all over again. So I guess that was part of it, that we had, I think, half our population or a third of our population in apartments.
Probably not quite that many. We had 3,000 of the apartment units.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you figure 2 people per unit, probably 6,000, that was a decent percentage.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that you had served under several mayors.
Yes.
Who were the mayors that you served under?
Well, actually, Dick English was the first mayor. I served under him for a whole 1 month before.
Of course, you came in June.
I came June, and July 1, a new council took office, and they didn't want me to accept until they knew who I would be working for, because it could have been people that
Didn't want you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you serve at the pleasure of the mayor and council.
Correct.
Yeah.
So after they knew how many. There was 6 people running for 5 seats, so they knew that the majority of the council would still be on council, and it would be reasonably safe for me to accept the position.
Yes, right. So with that, you moved the family. Yeah.
Moved the family, yes, and so started June. Worked for Dick English for 1 month. Jim Garrity came in, had a 4-year term. He was followed by Terry Weldon as mayor, and then Bill Larkin was the 4th mayor.
So that was 4 mayors. So now Ocean Township only has elections every 4 years, so there couldn't be even more multiple mayors over your 20 years.
There could have been maybe 2 more.
As other forms of government go.
Right.
Yeah, options.
Because I was there, I guess, for 2 of Bill Larkin's, well, I was there for more than 2 of his elections, but 2 while he was mayor.
Right.
And probably 2 for Terry Weldon.
And you said over 16 councilmen?
I believe it was, I tried to
figure that out.
Go back and do the math. And it seems like it was about 16 different council members.
What is your recollection of how Ocean Township appeared to you at the time as you were considering making the move here and accepting a job?
Well, the most appealing thing from a career municipal manager perspective was the fact that it had the township manager form of government. Secondarily, but still very important, was that it was a nonpartisan form of government. And I had never served in either of those capacities before. So that was particularly appealing in terms of a career path.
Where were you before Metuchen?
I held
in college.
No. I held 3 positions in Pennsylvania. The first one was Pembroke, just east of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was a small borough, and unusual in my profession to start out as a manager. But I was fortunate enough to get that. Then I went to Whitehall Township, just north of Allentown. And then I left the profession somewhat. I went to the Poconos to be the manager of Hemlock Farms, a private second home community.
Oh, interesting.
And they wanted somebody to set up a quasi-municipal structure for them to operate under. It was 4,400 housing lots.
Small town.
So it was actually fell into 3 different townships.
Oh.
So I went from there to Metuchen.
Oh, very, very interesting to have that little sideline, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. You said that Ocean Township actually caught up with Metuchen as far as traffic and density.
That's, well, not so much density, but certainly what I observe now in terms of traffic parallels what existed 30 years ago in Middlesex County in the Edison-Metuchen area.
Deal Road.
I have no idea what it's like there now.
Oh, yes, yeah, but are you not curious to go back and see that? Maybe sit there for 5 lights now, huh? Route 18 certainly added to the traffic as it traffic comes off Deal Road and is going up to West Park Avenue, so it's multiplied greatly now.
Yes, and while I was manager of Ocean, it used to stop. Route 18 didn't go the whole way through, and
Right.
that was completed during my time in Ocean Township. But
And summer traffic too.
summer traffic, but I still, there's been very little development east of Route 35.
Not much room, right?
Exactly. And so I've really been mystified as to why the traffic is built up so much east of 35. I just don't quite understand.
I think it's Deal Road and Logan Road, that intersection, didn't have a light for the longest time. That was in fact, when I think of it today, how would I ever get onto Deal Road from Logan Road? I know, it would be an all-day affair,
Right.
waiting for a break in the traffic.
And
And you put that in, right? So
that was put
one of
in
the things.
during my tenure, and Whale Pond also didn't have a traffic light.
Oh, boy. Can you imagine that today, huh? Well, we do imagine it. Your assessment of the town today, 10 years after you stepped down.
I think it's still a great place to live, work, play, and
Your son is happy here.
our son is exceedingly happy here and has no intention of moving away or moving to another town. Jason loves living here, as does his wife Ann.
Oh, that's terrific. And you were kind enough to group your contributions and highlights for us. And one of the things that you talk about are the land acquisitions, which were substantial during your time.
Yes.
Even improvements to the existing land. So we'll talk about some of those. Wayside Park expansion. And
We bought additional acreage there along Green Grove Road through a Green Acres grant. And it's still basically a wooded parcel, but we wanted to just buffer the existing park out at Wayside.
the Billy Goat Farm is also, what was the Billy Goat Farm is now an activity center which brings some recreation to the people of Wayside, although it's open to everyone.
That was a great acquisition. That was Joe Palea gave me a call, and he had a legislative grant. I don't remember the exact amount of money, and he first called the county and said, you know, I have this money coming, can you use it? And for whatever reason, the county said no. We don't have anything in mind to use that money, so he called me up. Dave, do you have any idea how we could spend X amount of dollars? And I said, sure, buy the Billy Goat Farm opposite the intermediate school. And he goes, great idea. And we put that all together and acquired that. And then subsequent to that, we had the construction of the gym and the ball fields.
Now, he had access to that because he was, I think, a senator at the time, a New Jersey state senator. And so certain things come their way, or information that might be helpful. And that certainly was helpful. And you had an idea and put that into effect. It came with some resistance, though, right?
Limited resistance.
Yeah.
Anytime you're doing the development part of it, there's going to be a little more resistance.
Yeah, that's true. You probably felt that a few times. Palea Park extension and expansion. Both. It was Joe Palea Park was steel test site, and
Correct.
renamed Joe Palea Park. We have to remember to say that because 30 years from now, people say, what does that mean, deal test site? Okay, tell us about that, the relocation of the human services. That was an idea that was in the expansion.
Well, the human services was in a double-wide trailer behind West Park Rec Center. And initially when I got here, well, there wasn't a human services department. There was a community services department.
That's right.
There was a welfare office, and there was a recreation department. And we combined all three of those into one single department. And community service gave up their rented space up in town shops. And the recreation office was in town hall, and we could use the added space, so we put all of them in a double wide. And I was on vacation one time out on the West Coast and saw a billboard for triple wide, and I took a picture of it and said, "You can dream."
That's good.
But they were clearly outgrowing that double wide trailer, and it was also showing signs of age. So when we acquired the portion of the Turner tract that now houses the Human Services Department, the museum, the library, there was the house there, and my idea was to have that be the home of the Human Services Department.
How many acres were added to Joe Palea Park?
You're testing me, and I can't give you an answer.
I think it was in the area of 40. It went from 208 to 240 something.
That sounds correct.
Sounds right?
Yes.
Okay, so that was that was quite an expansion, and to be used for municipal purposes, both cultural, literary, and human services was great.
We divided it into two parcels. One was the Green Acres acquisition, and the other was reserved for the museum and the library, because you can't have those two uses on a Green Acres parcel. I'm not sure why that regulation's in effect, but you have to play by the rules.
Yeah, because you're building on Green Acres.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the Human Services Department, because it encompasses the recreation offices, is allowed to be located on the Green Acres, and it was an existing structure. It wasn't something that we were building from scratch.
Right.
So we divided it into those parcels, and the library became reality through a state grant, and the museum became a reality through the moving of the house, and a lot of hard work on the part of Doc Richmond getting funding.
Funding's the key, isn't it, for these things?
Absolutely.
We can have great ideas, and then putting them into effect is another thing altogether. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was a good confluence of the money being available. Sometimes the money, there just isn't funding available when you need it. But what a wonderful complex it is now.
It is. It's an absolute. And Palea Park, formerly the Deal Test Site, was an absolute jewel also. But
as it was,
I came in as it was just starting to be developed opposite the Dow Avenue Elementary School. The soccer fields, the baseball fields, softball fields, and the playground. But otherwise, years later, my other son, Chad, was participating cross country, and usually those meets were at the Homedale Park, but they decided to have a home meet and use what was then the Deal Test Site.
What was the trails paved at that point?
There were no trails at that point. Well, there was the leftover from the Army, but it was rough.
Yeah.
And so we were standing out by the bicentennial tree. When I say we, I mean the parents, and watching the kids go by multiple times. And one of the parents said to me, "If there wasn't this, would we be allowed back here?" And it was like a light bulb went off. People don't realize
that they should be back there.
All something that's available to the public.
Well, the parking wasn't there. You'd have to come on bike, or
Correct.
Yes.
And then shortly after that, I was down in Pennsylvania watching my niece play soccer at a park outside of Philadelphia, and I saw this beautiful park with a trail system. And it's like, we need something like that to draw people in to the park. And that was the birth of the trail system there.
Right, yeah, and the paving of them so that people could use them for biking or
rollerblading, strollers.
Yeah, yeah, and it certainly came to life when there was parking available and the paving of the roads.
And then we did the additional development of the soccer fields along Dow Ave, or Whale Pond
Road, yeah.
And did the improvement to the festival grounds.
Well, one of the things I recall then was that there was a shortage of funds for that. I mean, we kept applying for redevelopment or development funds for Deal Test Site, and the roadblocks were considerable, aside from money.
Yes, when I arrived, there was a rather elaborate plan for the eventual development,
I remember.
including equestrian facilities and a stage for performances and things like that, which I guess will now be a reality shortly.
Well, we had a stage and productions there from 75 through 78. The stage still exists out there. It's amazing. So, there were things like that, but the public couldn't really participate because of the lack of facilities, actually, and access.
And yes.
Money. And money to do it.
Money was the major constraint. And you have wetlands, and there's numerous constraints with the park.
I know you probably had to battle with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as DEP for the resolution we tried to get for flooding in the township, which we thought, well, if we link it with recreation, they'll buy it and we'll do it. But that just never materialized.
No, it was a real exercise in frustration, and there was a considerable turnover in personnel with Army Corps, so every time there was a new flood at Poplar Village, we were dealing with new people, and it's as if they were seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
So that was a significant problem during my time in Ocean Township.
Drainage and flooding were probably followed you all the way through, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as did trying to get the funds for Deal Test Site, which just didn't materialize with all the plans.
Correct.
The plans were based on a survey that was done among the population, and we offered several options, and they loved the equestrian thing. That was one of the more favored, It was a very ambitious plan.
But surveys are very interesting. If you ask somebody, would you like this, this, and this, it's always yes. How much more would you be willing to pay in taxes to support this and this and this? Oh, nothing. So.
Well, that's always the manager's problem, isn't it? We give that to you. Colonial Terrace Golf Course, that was an acquisition on your part, on the town's part.
On the town's part.
Yes, right.
During the time I was manager, yes.
Yeah, and that's certainly well used now. Have you been over there? You golf?
I have. Well, I wouldn't call myself a golfer, no.
The Oakhurst Tower expansion parcel through a land swap. That was a creative deal.
Well, that was an acquisition under former manager Greg Fehrenbach, if I recall correctly. And there were a number of things that had to be done in order to retain that parcel of land in the tower, which I inherited, having to present reports and make sure that we weren't turning a profit and so on and so forth for X number of years.
I think he referred to that as Fehrenbach's folly.
Well, it was a wonderful folly.
But it was one of those things that maybe the potential couldn't be seen at the time. But,
right.
Yeah.
But the tower ultimately was structurally determined to be unsound and would have cost much too much to rehabilitate it. And we had a new tower put up at the contract or the vendor's expense, and the old tower taken down at the vendor's expense.
Well, that was a good deal.
And you know, we were then getting revenue on the new tower from multiple cell companies. So it was a absolute win-win-win.
It was a win-win-win. Yes, maybe the fourth win too. The former cable tower land and building on the industrial section of Roller Road. That was you did a lot with towers.
Well, that was an interesting one. Basically, the cable company no longer wanted to have an office in Ocean Township. And they met with me, and they were saying they wanted to concentrate everything down in Wall Township at their main headquarters, and that that facility didn't serve any purpose anymore. There was a tower there and a building. And I said, well, if it doesn't serve any purpose, then give it to us. And they're like, well, we can't do that. I go, sure you can.
And they did.
If you want us to let you out of your requirement to have an office in Ocean Township.
That's how you argued that. And it worked.
It worked.
It's interesting because Deal Test Site went the same way. They closed this facility and consolidated it with Wall Township.
Right.
You know, so what's with Wall Township? I don't know. Let's move on to your management reorganization. Now, that's real dry stuff for the general public, but it's meaningful in terms of the money that was saved during that time, reorganizations and such. Discuss that.
Well, we had, in my opinion, way too many departments at the time when I arrived, and as I already referenced, we created the Human Service Department, which incorporated 3 other offices into one department. We took the building, the zoning, construction code, put that all into one single department with one department head, and tried to consolidate
That was
things.
Mary Ann Walensky.
Mary Ann Walensky.
Yeah, she's
She started.
did that for
She
20
started
years
with
now.
me, and I think she was probably hired September of 1987, the year I started, and as the planning administrator, and then became the department head.
All right. You mentioned the number of supervisory positions that we had. Too many in the Police and Public Works Department,
Correct.
you said, which were the 2 largest departments.
And that's the major money centers, and the police department was even bigger before I arrived. They had
Are you talking about numbers or supervisory positions?
supervisory positions.
Yeah.
Also,
Because you actually,
to a small degree, numbers, but most of it, I think they had 3 captains and 8 lieutenants, or it might have been 5 captains. That preceded me a little bit. But when I arrived, there had been some attrition already, but they were looking to fill those positions, and instead we collapsed things and had more Indians and fewer chiefs.
well, that probably made you not very popular in some sectors.
Oh, I think that's an understatement. But we tried to do everything through attrition. It wasn't that we were demoting people.
Yeah.
In the same way in Public Works. The sanitation division, for instance, had multiple assistant supervisors. In mechanics, we had a superintendent of mechanics, we had a foreman of mechanics, and an assistant foreman of mechanics, and it's like,
Right. Yeah.
we just need people to fix the vehicles. We don't need that much supervision.
Right. So it left less room for people to go up. But did their pay scale go up?
The people that got greater supervisory responsibility got pay adjustments, yes.
Right. Okay. And then there were other financial, I won't say deals, but you had in Ocean Township, of course, any town, I'm sure, taxes going up is a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
It's a very big deal. And you were able to keep the tax rate for 13 years at a pretty low level, not if not low, same level.
When you say we, it's a plural we. It was a team effort. I stressed with all the departments that the idea of you need to spend your budget before the year ends 100% so that you can get that plus more next year, that concept goes out the window.
Went to zero.
Base budgeting, well, I went to, I'm more likely to reward you if you're able to generate savings than if you fully spend your budget. That's, what you can hang your hat on. And that doesn't, if something goes up, utility bills go up because the utility companies have increased things or something like that, it is the way it is. There's nothing we can do about that. But wherever you can generate economies, we need to do that.
Well, utilities and insurance were always going up, right? They were two major things that you had to plan for in advance. It's built and baked into the cake, right?
Yes.
And it makes things more difficult for budgeting.
Right. And insurance was one that I had to deal with early on, and that was in the early days of joint insurance funds. Now that's become a very common practice, but we generated a significant savings by becoming part of a more localized joint insurance fund, plus the municipal excess, which is a statewide for excess insurance. And I was chairman of our joint insurance fund for many, many years, and was also on the fund commissioner for the municipal excess liability joint insurance fund.
That's the dry stuff, but it's so essential. It's so essential in bringing the finances under control in the town, where people will say, I don't want my taxes to go up. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's the bottom line for them. All politics is local.
Yes.
Yeah. In recreation, you mentioned that Deal Test site was barely used, and it is to this day the jewel of the township. It was quite the thing to have acquired it, to develop it, to just have the festivals there, and the many activities.
But just the daily activity there is what really makes me smile when I go and see people walking their dogs or jogging or teaching their kid how to ride a bike or pushing the stroller.
Yeah, it's and it's there forever.
Yes.
Yeah, unless they come up with some way around it and want to put.
Let's hope not.
No, right. The festival site, it was enhanced through the installation of lights. That made it like a not 24-hour, that's for sure, but at least
a much safer environment, and one that
for the festivals
could be utilized by. At the time, it was the Greek Orthodox Church, the Italian American Club, and the neighbors were starting to get concerned that it was becoming overutilized that way. So we put a lot of constraints on hours of operation and how often that area could be utilized.
Yeah, well, the neighbors have something to say about that too, I guess. So.
Absolutely.
The parking, the noise, yes, all of that, but it still works now. You enhanced the Colonial Terrace Golf Course to provide golfers with a better course. It needed some upgrading, didn't it?
Yes, it was a family-run operation, and they didn't really have the resources that Ocean Township could bring to it.
The pool where I worked, actually.
Is that right?
Yes, I did. I was a lifeguard when the pool first opened. But it wasn't exactly all the time on good financial footing.
Competing with the ocean is difficult for a municipal pool in Ocean Township. So that was always a struggle, trying to get registration high enough that it would be a break-even operation.
Yeah.
And we were able to accomplish that in just a few short years after I started, and kept it on that positive track for the rest of my tenure.
At first, it was only open to township residents, and opening up to the surrounding populations was probably a good idea, just for the families to be able to participate and give us more membership, better membership, not,
And higher price membership for non-residents.
is that right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so is that what tipped it?
That
Or sink it?
that certainly was a significant contributing factor. Kathy Reeser coming on board as the recreation director, having somebody with her credentials was also a key factor.
Yes, and she'll be retiring now. When you look back and you see the people that you work with retiring, how does that make you feel?
Oh,
That they can retire. She was a kid.
These are people I hired.
That's right. So, what is your assessment of the town today, 10 years after you stepped down? You come back regularly, as you said.
Yeah, we come back several times every year, and again, we've only been away for 2 years now. So, I think that Ocean Township is experiencing the same continuing growing pains that were somewhat present when I arrived. Affordable housing has always been a problem. We opted out of participating in affordable housing when I came on board. That's when the state was giving numbers and.
How were you able to opt out? I thought that was kind of a mandatory formula.
If you didn't submit a plan and come under the Council of Affordable Housing, you were then at the mercy of the courts.
I see.
And
right.
We determined that it was better to be at the mercy of the courts than the mercy of the Affordable Housing Council, because I think the first number we received back in the late 80s was something like 1,400 or 1,600 affordable housing units would have to be built, which is half of the apartments. And it's like, where would we ever build that? There wasn't that much open space available. It would have to be high rises or extremely high density. And we felt cheated that we've already done affordable housing before it was fashionable, in terms of the apartments, in terms of the lot size in the Wanamassa area. So we were ahead of the curve, but we get no credit for any of that. That was just history, and they didn't want to hear about that.
That always concerned me, that all of those apartments, and I forget how many we said there were.
About 3,000.
About 3,000 of them didn't count.
No.
When we were ahead of the ball. It only counted when the Mount Laurel decision was handed down. Anything from then on counted.
Correct.
I never understood that, and I thought maybe a brilliant lawyer would be able to make that case, but it hasn't been made yet.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, because I think, if you look at Mount Laurel, they absolutely had exclusionary zoning. But Ocean Township had very balanced zoning in terms of allowing the apartments, having the density that we had in Wanamassa, a little less so in terms of the density in the Oakhurst section. The newer development was in Wayside, and granted that was larger lot size and less density. But we were basically being punished because we weren't allowed to look back.
A strange case that sometimes I hope will be reversed, because Ocean Township certainly had the best of intentions in putting in the apartments and of providing a lot of affordable housing, although rents are awfully high too. But that's probably true all over.
Yes.
Yeah, we have Dale Test Site and the Welch property, both on the east side of 35. So we have more open space than almost any town, I'm sure most towns, reserved in open space, which was a great.
Yeah, certainly in eastern Monmouth County.
Absolutely.
They are significant parcels of land.
That was one of the factors, I think, in granting the money, because they saw the value of having east of 35 to have some open space.
Yes.
So we were really lucky to have both.
Absolutely.
Yeah. the county has that property, and that nothing is happening there either. And until they have the money, that may be just fine, that it just works as a open space preserved.
They've come up with plans in the past for potential partial development of that. There are a lot of constraints because of the brook and wetlands and things like that on the parcel.
Which is one good reason for preserving the land, so
Yes.
that there can't be exceptions in building that goes on, and regardless of how close you are to the, yeah. With one mayor resigning and a federal case over the sandhills in Ocean Township, there were some blips in the time that you were here.
Yes,
when you
there
look
were.
back on them, does that detract from your perception of the time you were here?
No. The Sandhill, obviously, that was a situation where a developer ran into a decline in the housing market and a change in the economy, alleging that the land was made unbuildable. And if you look there now, I think all of the people that live there would
Disagree?
dispute the fact that it was unbuildable.
It was a major, when I say a federal case, it was actually a federal case. There was the FBI involved, and
I don't remember the FBI having a significant role in that particular case. The other one, obviously, that was a total FBI.
right. So we had our ups and downs for a while, but we got through those very, very nicely, and
We did. It was nice that even after something like that happened, that basically, I think it might have been all the incumbents got reelected. I obviously was concerned personally, professionally, that this could be the end of my career or my career in Ocean Township, that the brush would paint too broadly. And fortunately, that was not the case.
yeah. Well, did you go into retirement though after that?
Well after, probably 6 years after that.
And one of the last elections, there was no opposition.
Yes,
So
correct.
people in general were very happy, I guess, with the town, its management, and its council.
I'd like to think that.
Well, you got a high praise from Mayor Larkin, who said that I've been with Dave for 16 years, so as his councilman and
then
as mayor.
Correct.
And he's taught me how to be a good mayor. He said
Well,
that. I
that's
read
very
that in
nice.
the
I
paper.
appreciate that.
Yeah. He said Dave knew every blade of grass in this township. Now, how did you do that?
Well, 20 years does that.
Well, you had your fingers on the pulse of the community.
I was not the type individual to solely sit in my office, even though I did put in innumerable hours in the office. But if somebody called in with a question or concern that warranted somebody being out there, I may send Bill Taylor, as Public Works Director, out to look at it.
Great guy.
I'm going to be by his side.
Yeah.
And so I tried to get out and not be one-sided in terms of just being behind the desk pushing paper kind of manager.
No, you weren't that. What is your assessment of the town today as you look into the future? It has a problem on Route 35 with stores closing. There's retail is in trouble all over the place.
Route 35 has always been a challenge ever since long before my time. They put in the median.
Yeah.
And to have to go to West Park or Deal Road or Sunset in order to turn around to get to stores on the other side is problematic. And then to go home again, you have to, go up to the next intersection and go the other direction. So
It's the heck out of those left-hand turns, though.
in terms of safety and sanity, absolutely. But if you're trying to take a building that is in the middle there, and that's their only access.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that some are big enough and well known enough that they will draw regardless.
It's the smaller stores, the home stores.
Correct.
Yeah, hometown
the
stores.
little furniture store or that kind of thing. It becomes a challenge for them to stay in business and get the traffic.
A far cry from in the 60s when there were bumper stickers that said "Stay alive on 35."
No.
You know, and it was kind of wow, okay, we'll try that. It was an effort at the time too to put the lines, the power lines, underneath the ground, and we almost had the state convinced to do that at the time that they put the barrier up, but then it became a matter of cost and it didn't happen.
Right, that's a shame.
Yeah, it was a shame.
Very nice, but Ocean Township has attracted some very nice stores. Wegmans would be a key example that's bringing traffic in, and of course, the other side of that is there's traffic.
That's right.
So,
that's right. That's right.
But they fixed up that entire center at the time they did that.
Yeah.
So that entire center was improved substantially. Middlebrook has done a very nice job of putting in a very nice facade. So there are some very positive signs that I see along Route 35.
Well, Costco has been an asset to the town too. People come from all over to go to Costco.
Yes.
Have you got one in Virginia?
We have one in Norfolk, Virginia.
No, it's a trip, huh?
Well, it's we have a BJ's and a Sam's Club closer to our house.
Do you have any advice for the new manager, the yet to be named manager? We're in transition right now with Greg Fehrenbach filling in as interim.
I guess my advice would be to get to know the town and get to know the blades of grass, and work closely with the elected officials. The township manager form of government, or council manager form of government, is interesting in that there's an awful lot of power vested in the manager, including some of the appointments, not just of personnel, but of others. But you need to balance that with those who've been elected by the citizens. And remember that you serve at their pleasure, and it's their job to set the agenda, and it's your job to carry out that agenda, and at the same time make recommendations to them for them to consider in their adoption of new policy.
Kind of both ways, that you're recommending based on what you know to be available and your assessment of it being a good thing for the town.
Correct.
And then they decide to empower you to go ahead with that, on the other hand, and then they come up with ideas of their own, which I'm sure that they propose to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But when you left, you said, my wife and I have some aggressive travel plans. Aggressive. I have a long list of things to do around the house, and I may do some consulting on the side. How much of that happened?
Well, when I retired, I joined Jersey Professional Management. Well, I was already working for Jersey Professional Management even while I worked here, and that was with the permission of the mayor and council. I never took an outside assignment without letting them know what it was going to involve, and the council was very enlightened. They said, that's wonderful, because you're now going to get perspectives from outside of Ocean Township, and you're going to be able to bring things back to us. So I always was thrilled when you have an enlightened council that can see beyond just their four walls.
Yeah.
So I did that much more aggressively. I was the interim manager, just like Greg Fehrenbach is now. I was in Plainfield, New Jersey, which was a very different environment. an urban environment with a significant high density, different crime rate, and a paid fire department. And
Yeah.
the dynamics were very different, but I spent probably 8 months doing that, and then they brought me back for at least 2 more years to do their budget after I left that, and they had somebody in place. So I did a lot of those kind of things, and once I moved out of state, I gave up the consulting part of it.
Did you do the travel part of it?
Travel we have done extensively. This year, we go to Maui for the winters. We're
Nice.
allergic to the cold.
Uh-huh. And Virginia has cold, doesn't it? Yeah.
Virginia gets a little cold, but not the same as New Jersey.
No.
And this year we did a month in Australia as a side trip from Hawaii. We leave for Eastern Europe tomorrow. We're going on a Russian River cruise in September, and there may be another trip yet to be named beyond that.
That's fantastic.
And we've kind of kept that pace up ever since I've been retired.
And you mentioned grandchildren.
Yes.
How many?
We have 2 grandchildren, a grandson and a granddaughter in Richmond, Virginia. So we
Cool.
moved down to Virginia Beach to be closer, but not on top of them.
It's yes, it's the best thing, isn't it? Being a grandparent.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's like you never imagined, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it certainly is. Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck in your travels, and hope you come back often.
We absolutely will. We have our oldest son here, and
Right.
we have every reason to come back, plus wonderful friends here in Ocean Township.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks very, very much. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this trip through 42 years in 2 programs with 4 managers in Ocean Township. And be sure to catch the other program and add it to this one. And you'll get a real rounded picture of the town as it evolved over 42 years. Thanks again. Watch us again in Hometown Histories next time.